Before we dive into today's episode, I have something truly special to share. Next September, I'll be leading an intimate women's retreat through the south of France and northern Italy, and you're invited. Picture this: mornings exploring the colorful markets of the French Riviera, afternoons sipping wine, and a hotel view with golden Mediterranean sunsets. Whether you love photography, food, or just want to reconnect with your playful creative self, this trip is designed for you. Spots are limited, so if all this sounds like your kind of adventure, please visit tourwithabsolutely.com and look for the tour France and Italy with Crystal. You can also send me a message or check out the show notes. Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is La Vie Creative, the podcast. Claudine Hemingway is a descendant of famed writer Ernest Hemingway. We bumped into each other at a party and decided to team up and dive deep into French history, but with a twist, by bringing a spotlight to those lesser-known creatives in France. This is History with a Hemingway. Hey guys, thanks so much for listening. If you want more bonus material and to support the show, head on over to patreon.com/La Vie Creative. And also don't forget to check out Amazon, where you can pick up my new book, Paris, A Life Less Ordinary. In the book, I talk about my creative adventures in Paris, from starting my business to being homeless, hello, starving artist, to how I met all these wonderful creative people. Don't forget to check it out on Amazon. And also thank you so much once more for listening and for your support. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to Paris History, Avec, a Hemingway. I'm here with Claudine Hemingway to bring you more fascinating history, French history that is, and the women who lived it. Today we are talking about Madame de Maintenon, and she was one of Louis XIV's wives, but she was kind of a secret wife, as I understand. And Claudine can give us more information about that.
Yes, Madame de Maintenon. Last week we talked about Madame de Montespan, so we kind of wanted to have these kind of close together because their stories do kind of intertwine a bit. But Madame de Maintenon, her father was Constant de Aubigny, and he was a Huguenot, and he was sent to prison for counterfeiting, gambling. He killed a man in a duel, and he even abducted a woman and tried to lead a rebellion against the crown.
Wow, that's a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah, he had a whole bag of things there. So, and then her mother, Jeanne de Caudillac, was the daughter of the prison director in Nîmes, which is where her father had been sent. So her father's in prison, and her mother meets him there. So, you see all those Lifetime movies where the woman falls in love with the prisoner, which I've never really understood.
Yeah, I mean, what is the purpose?
I know. So what was the two brothers that killed their parents?
Oh gosh.
Some story about they all these women were sending him letters, and then they ended up marrying one of them, but they never even met him in real life. I'm like, that's just strange.
It is so strange. And you do hear about that a lot, where they write letters to each other, and I guess they have conjugal visits. I don't know. How does that work? Don't want to know.
Very strange. Well, apparently Jean and Constant had some conjugal visits because her mother ended up being with him, and they had 3 children, all while he was in prison.
I didn't even think that was legal back then.
Yeah, and I'm sure her father, being in charge of the prison, was very proud of her.
Yeah, like, way to go, daughter.
I know. Yeah, I'm surprised he didn't send her away after the first one. So,
seriously.
As soon as Madame de Maintenon, she was actually Françoise. When she was born, she was instantly taken away, and she was sent to the Chateau de Marseille, where her paternal aunt lived, and she was raised there until 1642, when her mother convinced her father to let Constant out of jail. So the next year, Constant has this big plan to get rich. And so he's going to take all of the family down to Ile Marie Galante, which is this island, a French-controlled island. And he had all these big ideas that he was going to go there and he was going to make all this money. And so he took the whole family there, all 3 children and his wife. And so once they were there, he basically just abandoned the family.
Wait, it's an island. How do you escape your kids and wife?
Well, maybe he went to the other side.
Okay, got it.
I know you're not really abandoning it, probably. And I don't think it's like a humongous island because
I was gonna say, how big is this island?
I know it's Ile Marie Galante. It's not one that really like, oh yeah, I know that one. It's huge. So so he abandoned basically, like, he went down there to get, find his riches and probably pull more scams, and he didn't. And so he basically just, left them alone. So Jean and her 3 kids decided to go back to Paris. And it'd been a couple years. They were down there for a few years. So they go back to Paris, and they basically had like no money, of course. And she, didn't know what to do. So they were like basically begging on the street for food.
You mean marrying the inmate didn't work out?
I know. Really?
So shocking.
This week on Lifetime. So she was begging for food. And then her aunt, once again, finds out about this and takes her in. And quickly right after that, her mother dies. Her father ends up coming back to Paris as well. And then he dies about the same time as her mother did, even though they didn't have any contact with him.
Mm. Tragic.
So Madame de Villette was her aunt, and she raised her and her 2 brothers, but she raised them as Protestants. And when Francois's grandmother, Suzanne de Baudon, found out, she just couldn't believe this. She was just like, there's no way, they can't raise her as a Protestant. We are Catholic. And so she demanded and took her away. And so she took her and put her into a convent, which seems to be where almost all of our stories at some point.
I was going to say, everybody lived in a convent.
Yeah, and it was a convent on Rue Crameau, and in 1649, it was later to the Ursulines on Rue Saint Jacques convent. And so she didn't, but Francois didn't like being there, of course. And so she thought she wanted to be back with her aunt. She didn't want to be there. But she became very close with one of the nuns there, named Sister Celeste. And Sister Celeste kind of took her under her wings and kind of, was a real motherly figure to her and really helped her out. But her godmother would come up to Paris every weekend and take her out to the fancy parties and meet all the people in Paris at the time.
I mean, that would be a real getaway after living in a convent.
I know, going from the convent to like a salon in Paris would be quite the adjustment, I think.
Yeah, a little wild.
And so one day they're at a salon, and she meets a man named Paul Scarron. He was a poet, and they began to write letters to each other. And then the winter of 1651, he asked her to marry him. And so she knew she had 2 choices. She could get married or basically stay in the convent and become a nun. And so I think she, was pretty quick to make the decision to marry him.
I think that's a pretty easy choice right there.
Yeah, but Paul, he was very ill, and he was crippled, and he was partially paralyzed, and they think it's from polio. And he was 25 years older than her. I found a picture of him, like a painting of him online, and I'll put it on my website. And I was like, eek.
Yikes. Maybe become a nun.
Yeah. So, but he, she was, they had a really good relationship because he was very smart and very worldly and very interesting. And she just was really fascinated by all those topics, and she always wanted to learn more. So on April 4th, 1652, they got married. And her, by marrying Paul, he kind of gave her access to, all of the high life of Paris. She was able to meet a lot of people. He was very well known in the literary circles. They had a weekly salon at their house. And so more people were coming over, all of the intellectuals at the time. And so she was able to even see, a bigger realm of what the world and what Paris had to offer than, just being in the convent.
Yeah, it opened her world being with her
Yeah.
crippled old man husband.
Yeah,
20
exactly.
25 years or senior.
I know all of these, there's so many of these stories where the men are like 30 years older, 40 years older. It just is very strange. And a lot of times she was a little bit older, but sometimes the wives, are 15 years old when they get married. Very
I
strange.
don't, I guess, yeah, wow.
Yeah.
That was very normal back then and
Yeah.
sometimes normal today.
Yeah, sometimes normal today. But their marriage, for the most part, was very happy and they loved each other. And for 8 years, she basically served more as his nurse, taking care of him because he was so ill. And in 1660, he died.
So does that mean she had to go back to the convent?
No. Well, so because her godmother was also in service to Queen Anne, who was the mother of Louis XIV, she was she convinced them, they gave her husband's pension to her. So she was able to stay in Paris and live on this pension for a while until 1666 when Queen Anne died and Louis XIV decided, well, I'm not going to pay for that. We're stopping that. So at that point, then Francoise was really nervous and she thought, she was relying on money from friends and from other people. And she thought, I can't live here anymore. She was about ready to move to Portugal to be the lady in waiting for the new Queen of Portugal. And at that time, Madame de Montespan, who we talked about last week, they had met many times in the salons, and she had said, they were kind of close, and she knew she could trust her, and said, Madame de Montespan had quite a few children, illegitimate children, Louis XIV. And they really couldn't, they were illegitimate. They couldn't be a member of court. They had to be kind of hidden away. And so they were going to rent a home. And she asked Madame de Maintenon if she would, be their governess and take care of them.
I mean, that's an upgrade to being the queen's maid, I guess. She can stay in France that way. She didn't have to learn Portuguese.
Yeah, exactly. So she was able to stay in France, luckily.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, she was involved with Louis de Mornay, who was the Marquise de Villerceau, and he was the ex-lover of another lady we've talked to about, Ninon de la Closse, and she was the one that was the courtesan who she had and this was the man she had the child with. And so Francoise had this 3-year relationship with Louis, and Louis was also a self-taught painter, more of a hobby of a painter, and he had her sit for him many times. And if you watch the show Versailles, that's on Netflix, there is a man that comes in and shows a bunch of paintings of her that's, with the topless, and she doesn't, it's sitting nude, and they kind of, the paintings get passed around court, and it just becomes this big, scandal. And that's where they came from.
Everything's so incestuous at this time.
It is. Everything kind of always goes back together. So when Madame de Montespan was, the mistress of Louis XIV, and so she asked, she had asked her to take care of the children. And so she went there and she would look over the 7 children that were the illegitimate children with Louis XIV. They had this house that was in the Marais. And so she basically would take care of them and look after them. And she absolutely adored them and they adored her. And it was she treated them as they were her own. And the first time Louis XIV met her, he came one day to see his children. And the first time he met her, he was not impressed. He thought that he was kind of bossy and he didn't really like her.
But little did he know he would fall madly.
Love would blossom. So she was actually one of the ones that helped convince them that the children should be legitimized. And so Louis XIV had all of the children legitimized. And so once that happened, they could come out of hiding. So all of them went to Saint-Germain-en-Laye at the chateau. And Francoise went with them and was looking over them and taking care of them and was the governess now, the official governess, because they can now be seen in court and she could actually, have a bit of somewhat of a title.
I just had a photo shoot at Saint-Germain-en-Laye.
So pretty out there.
I had no idea that that's where they were hanging out. It's beautiful out there.
Yeah. So when at the time Louis XIV appreciated what she, he'd come to, like her at this point, and he appreciated what, she did. And he said one time it would be something to be loved by a woman like that, when he would see how she cared about his children. And as a thank you, he gave her a very large sum of money, because with that sum of money, she was able to buy the Chateau de Maintenon in 1675. And so Louis XIV also ended up giving her that as as her official title. So that's how she became Madame de Maintenon.
So she was a nanny who worked her way up the ladder, the corporate nanny ladder.
She did. See, it's still kind of like a Lifetime movie.
I really like this. This sounds very unreal.
I know. So in 1680, if you remember from last week's episode, what took Madame de Montespan, there's so many of them.
A mouthful.
I know, I get them mixed up. They was the affair of the poisons, and that was the biggest thing about her, and what she wanted this potion to make Louis fall in love with her. So the poison affair comes into it, and now Madame de Montespan is basically sent away from court. Like, she's just, she used to be, the headmistress and his closest confidant. And now, they find out that all these people are dying and she could be the fault of it. So of course they send her away from court. So Françoise is over there in the wings. She's just over there, and they name her the second lady in waiting to the Dauphin.
Ooh,
the lady in waiting, like if you're the lady in waiting, it's like basically the highest rank for a woman to have in court other than the queen.
Wait, really? And you're just the side piece?
Yeah.
So you can be the mistress and be second to the queen?
Yes, basically.
Wow.
Because they looked at it as like that is the highest level a woman could have. Yes.
Interesting.
But they weren't exactly, she still, at this point, Louis and Françoise became closer, and she pushed away his advances most of the time because he trusted her and would ask her for his guidance. But because she was so religious, she thought, she didn't really want to get involved with him in a sexual relationship because of the queen. And that just wasn't, she was trying to live this better life than she had, maybe sometimes in the past. So she saw her place at court as being one of basically just to keep the king's soul from going to hell.
She was protecting his soul.
She was protecting his soul. And he kind of looked at it that way too. But the people at court weren't very fond of her. His brother Philippe and his wife Lisolette didn't like her at all. They absolutely hated her. That definitely comes across in the TV show Versailles. And so, but on July 30th, 1683, the queen died. And a few months later, on October 9th, 1683, the king and Francois married. And it was a very secret occasion. This isn't something in Notre Dame du Paris. It's not, that's in the papers. It's nowhere. It's very quiet. So they did it in front of the Archbishop of Paris, Francois de Harlay, ended up marrying them in front of the king's confessor, our friend Père de Lachaise, and in his bedroom at Versailles. So wow, it definitely was much more understated than most royal weddings are.
And it had to be a secret because she was just the mistress.
Well, a lot of it they looked at is because she didn't come, basically all of the royal relationships were, you had to come, like the woman had to come from a certain class. And her name, her rank was basically purchased for her by Louis XIV when he made her the Madame de Maintenon.
What happened to her 3 kids?
Madame de Maintenon didn't have children.
Yeah, but she had 3 kids from that other guy, the prison guy. She was one of the kids.
That was her brothers, her 2 brothers.
That's right. She was one of the kids of the prison guy.
Yeah.
Wow, so many things.
Yeah. So of course, and I'm sure that back then, even though people knew those stories, so the fact that she was born basically in a prison
didn't look too good for her.
It's not going to look so good for Louis XIV, basically way down below his rank.
Interesting.
So, but it was called, what they call it is a morganatic marriage. And that was because she could never be recognized as a queen or his official wife. And I have always been fascinated by Louis XIV, but I think it took years before I really ever found her name in anything. So a lot of the histories some histories don't even mention her at all. Like, he was married once and that was it.
So he never remarried. Well, he married her, but he never remarried any like queen again.
No. So she was she was, the queen, but she could not take any sort of anything from being the queen.
Interesting. And she had his 7 kids she adopted, basically.
Well, yeah, I mean, she had him, she had them legitimized. And so then when Montespan was sent from court, her, many of her children didn't really have anything to do with them because now they've been legitimized. And of course, now, Papa is paying for everything.
I like it.
Yeah, not too bad.
Not too shabby.
He moved her into this very fancy, huge apartment that was across from his on the ground floor of Versailles, which also caused people to, completely freak out because that, she was an outsider. So a lot of the people at court just did not like her from the very beginning. So, but he spent like all of his time with her in her room. He would take meetings in her room. He would decide matters of state. He basically confided with her on everything and looked to her for guidance for any decision that he ever made. So of course, his ministers and the people of court were not going to like her because that was what they were supposed to do. And when you're not getting, the king's ear, you could basically almost lose your head.
Yeah, I was going to say they killed a lot of people for very little reason back then. For very
little reason, yeah. So, but Louis was worried because he had been so unfaithful in his life. He had quite a few mistresses and quite a few children with different women. And so he saw Francoise as a key to forgiveness. And he thought, that was being with her was a way to clean up his soul and get him into heaven.
So he was really just worried about going to hell?
Well, and it's kind of funny because Louis XIV, they call him the Sun King because he believed that God spoke through him. And so every decision he made was like an extension of God to basically not as much a religious thing, but as basically proving how powerful he was.
Yeah.
So if you thought that literally the sun rose because you woke up every day, but you're worried about getting into hell, like, can't you really already control that if that's what you already think?
I don't think he was believing in himself as much as others were.
I think he needs to have a little self-talk.
Yeah, he needs a life coach.
Yeah, he needs a life coach. So, but in 1684, Louis created the Maison Royale de Saint-Louis, and it was out in Rouet, which is Rouet-Malmaison now. And it was a school for the noble families of which their parents had been killed in battles. And this was something that he had done for Francoise that was very important to her. She wanted to be able to have a little something else. And so she, talked to him and they created the school. And so it was a convent. When she was at the convent as a child, she wasn't happy with the way that they were teaching things, because they were teaching to girls. So they're not going to teach them science and languages and things like that. They're girls. Their job in life is to be a nun or a wife. So they don't need to know anything. Mm-hmm. And she didn't want that. So she basically, they created this school and then she helped create this curriculum to really teach young women actual things, actual topics and actual and reading and philosophy and all of these different things. So, and she wanted to do it for all of these children that came from, different royalty and other aristocrats that, a lot of their parents, may have been killed. And so they're, able to take care of them.
That's so crazy that they allowed that to happen because girls weren't allowed to do anything.
Yeah, definitely. So, but later they moved the school to Sancerre, which is near Versailles. So it was a little bit closer. But she was very involved. And a lot of people say that she was the first female teacher in France, which is not true, of course. Mm-hmm. But, because she was so involved in it and she was looking for a way for these, young women to be able to become something other than, just this wife that sits in the corner and nods her head.
I mean, that obviously had to be very close to her heart because she was the nanny. So,
Yeah.
and she was just going to be like always the nanny. So obviously she wanted to help people. That's crazy, but I can kind of see how she would be the symbol as like the first teacher in France.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty cool. I mean, considering, I mean, this is the 17th century.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the back at court, people weren't having any of this. And the Duc de Saint-Simon wrote that he thought that she was a schemer. And she basically flaunted and faked her religious devotion to kind of scare Louis, keep him in place to get what he wanted, to get what she wanted.
I mean, do you think she did that? Because she could have. He was scared about going to the devil.
Yeah, I mean, there may be a little. If you watch the TV show, there's a whole like she leaves and scene that he comes and sees her, and basically he has to kind of profess his devotion, and at that point it kind of changes. I mean, the show Versailles, it's a really great show, but also don't look at it as like every single thing in there is accurate.
Mm-hmm.
But it is interesting how they portray the relationship, and she definitely was more of like a motherly kind of a figure than Montespan, who was kind of like this, like coming into court, like, vampy and sexy. And Maintenon was not.
She was the teacher and the nanny and his pass to heaven.
Yes, exactly. She wasn't the va 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 boom boom. But so towards the end of Louis's life, right before he was very sick, and they burned all of these letters. Louis and Francoise burned all of these letters, love letters they had sent to each other, which just, of course, just makes me cringe because it's like, oh, I wonder what kind of great things were in those letters. But they burned them all, and probably because of the fact where, she wasn't an official wife in many ways. But on August 30th, 1715, when she was told that there was nothing more they could do for Louis XIV, she left Versailles.
Oh, she just left.
Yeah, they told her, that there's nothing more. She should just leave. So she left Versailles and she went to Sancerre at the school, and she stayed there. And 2 days later, he died on September 1st.
So she didn't even get to be there when he died.
No. Mm-mm.
That's sad.
Yeah, I wonder if she was like the, official queen, if she would have been able to, or if they were just kind of like, forget it, you can't be here, no matter what.
I kind of feel like they were just like, get out, we don't like you.
I know. They were like, finally, which is funny because that's where it's like, you look at Louis XV and Madame du Barry, and she was kind of horrible and hated Marie Antoinette, and Marie didn't like her either. And then when Louis XV died, they were like, "Yep, you're out of here.
Bye."
Like, you better write out the role as mistress while you can, because it will end. It's not going to end well.
Well, at least they let her keep her stuff. She got her school.
She had her school, so she ended up living there for the rest of her life. And which was only 4 more years, but she would go there and she would take visitors. And Peter the Great would come visit. There was all these like high-ranking officials from other countries that actually would still come to see her, and they really liked talking to her and getting her guidance. But she was much older and very tired. And on April 15th, 1719, she died at 83 years old.
She lived a long time.
Yes, a very long time. She was buried there at Sancerre until 1793, when her body was exhumed by the revolutionaries. And later, Sancerre would be turned into a military school by Napoleon.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I thought that was a military school out there.
Yeah, so he actually turned it into a school. After World War II, her remains were found, and they moved her to the Chapel of Versailles. But in 1969, they actually moved her back to Sancerre. So she ended up getting buried back, and now to this day, she's staying in her school that she loves so much.
I'm curious how they move these dead bodies, because by this time, I feel like there's not a whole lot left. After all those years. Not a whole lot
left. I just I wrote in October a thing about the desecration of Saint Denis, which happened in October, and it was like when they opened the tombs, like some of them were like complete, like just down to dust. There was nothing left of them. But then some of them, like Louis XIII, his jet black mustache was like in perfect condition.
What?
And there was Henry IV. It was also like practically like it, it'd been 300 years since he died, and he looked like he had been buried the day before. Like they say,
that is so strange.
Such perfect shape that they basically propped him up so people could look at him for 2 days.
What is that about? That
Yeah.
is so strange.
Yeah. So, I mean, you don't know. I mean, some of those, I don't, I don't know if they had embalming techniques back then like that, but
Yeah. Or maybe they were, wow. Maybe it was like how well the tomb didn't have air in it. I don't
yeah,
know. That's weird.
yeah. But then, it's like the people were moved around so much by, when the revolutionaries, at Saint-Denis, they had two different holes. They had one for the Bourbons and one for the Valois. And they basically were tossing, and at least, kept them kind of together. But they put quicklime on them, which basically just your body disintegrates everything that's left of it. But later on, like when you go to Saint-Denis now, like most of those tombs are completely empty because there's just
Yeah, that's why I'm thinking, like, how'd they find her if the revolutionaries took her and put lime on her? Like,
I mean, it's just like when Madame de Pompadour, Madame, which one was it? Diane de Poitiers. When she died, she had been in a horse accident and she broke her leg. And it'd been months and months later she died. But when they later found her body, they were able to figure out it was her because of the break in her leg, in her bone.
that's so crazy.
But I'm sure most of them don't, did they have dental records from back then? Did they have all those kinds of things? I think sometimes they're just kind of like, there's a femur. That's good.
That's what I'm thinking. Like, there's a finger bone.
Yeah, exactly. There's a finger and a femur. Throw it in the box and we're moving on.
Yeah, I don't imagine it's all that like real.
Yeah, no, yeah, you don't really know. I mean, now it's kind of like you just go there and you see the tombs, but know that nobody's there.
I mean, the tombs are so much prettier than dead bodies anyway.
Oh, totally. I don't really think I want to see the dead body.
No, even if the black mustache is still there.
Yeah, I mean, one of them, like when they opened him, like he was completely I think it was Louis XIV. He was completely black, like his whole entire body had just like basically turned black.
Weird.
Yeah,
That's so crazy.
yep.
Well, Claudine, thank you for another fascinating woman in French history.
A little bit better than last week's with Montespan and the crazy things she did. But
Yeah, I know. A little nicer.
it's a little lighter. It's a little bit lighter.
A little lighter. Thanks, guys, for tuning in, and we hope to hear from you and see you next week. Thanks so much.
See you then.
Thank you for listening to Paris History Avec a Hemingway. If you want to find out some more, you could always find me on my Instagram page, Claudine Bleu Blanc Rouge, and that's BLEU, as in the French way to spell it. And each day I post a daily history lesson about a person or a place or something in Paris, or it's lots of fun facts. And then also at ClaudineHemingway.com, where you can also sign up for my newsletter there.